Chapter 14. Peace at Last. After a deep, dreamless sleep, John woke at 10 o'clock with sunlight streaming through the window. He threw off his clothes, placed them in a pile by the bed and headed for the shower. Like most showers, this one had two settings, E and Ooh, the first being too cold and the other being close to scalding. With decreasing levels of suffering, he managed to find a happy medium. However, he soon found his bliss interrupted with spasmodic sharp temperature drops at the E level and concluded that the shower in the other room was being used at the same time. His responding attempts to keep the temperature steady by rapid adjustments must have had an adverse effect on the plumbing, because he could hear multiple shrieks and giggles coming from the other room. Finally, the occupants of both showers enjoyed their rediscovered aquatic bliss for a good 5 minutes. John tried very hard not to imagine what was going on in the next room. He failed. On his way out of the shower, he needed to pull on his jeans in haste following a knock on the door. "Come in, whoever you are." "Good morning," said the twins simultaneously as they burst in. They were drying their hair with towels, which were, in addition to the white bath towels they had wrapped themselves in. They dipped their bare right shoulders at him to show who had the tattoo. "We're now going to make a solemn promise to you," said Susan. Then they both spoke together again. "We, Susan and Lindsay Savage, solemnly swear never to play tricks on Mr. Street and always make it obvious to him which one of us is which." They made a gesture which involved them putting one foot and one hand out towards him. "Ta-ra!" "Thank you. You don't know how pleased I am to hear you say that. One more favour, please. Could you stop talking at the same time, or sort of limit it a bit? Sorry, it's very charming, but a bit scary." The sisters glanced at each other and Susan said on her own, "OK, done. Do you want some breakfast?" "Yes, please, I'm starving." "Shredded wheat and scrambled eggs?" John and Lindsay nodded enthusiastically. "Be down in 10 minutes then. Oh, you can bring your clothes and things into my room because Lindsay's stuff's in here and she wants to get ready so she can go straight home after breakfast." John, left alone with Lindsay, crammed all his things into his suitcase and paused in the doorway. "I'm so glad to have met you, bizarre as it was, and thanks for phoning me last night." "Nice to meet you too. I thought we made a good team. Street and Savage, troubleshooters, very professional." "Don't you mean Savage and Street?" "Of course. When will we see you again, and where do you live?" "I live in Barnet, North London, and you'll see me very soon. Thursday evening, here for dinner." "I don't know anything about this." "Don't worry, Susan only thought of it this morning. If you can't make it, she said she will arrange it for another night. It'll just be us three and Ben Carter. She hasn't said anything to him yet either. She was going to ask him this afternoon." "Of course, we're going to his place today. I'd almost forgotten." "You're going there at 3 o'clock. You see, I know every detail of your life, past, present and future. Now excuse me, I have to get ready." John got dressed rapidly, or rather put his jumper and shoes on. He caught the smell of coffee drifting up the stairs, and for a moment breakfast became the most important thing in the world. Then he heard the rumble of a gong, followed by Susan calling up the stairs and being silly. "If you please, me lady, me lord, breakfast has been served at this very moment." John was standing by the breakfast table before the gong stopped resonating. "By heck, I'm famished. Where's me grub, lass?" Susan didn't answer, but kissed him instead while he held her close. "I'm so happy," she said at last. "Me too. Sit down. Do you want a grapefruit juice?" "Thank you. Oh, and I'm OK for dinner on Thursday, Lindsay told me." "Oh, good. I promise I won't keep you waiting in desperate hunger for hours. Can't have you walking out on me." "How do you keep your towel from falling off?" "It's not just a towel, it's a towel tube. Lindsay made it. They're much better than bathrobes." She did a twirl. "See, it's a tube. There's no zip or anything. It's made of soft toweling, but it's elasticated. That's how it stays on. It feels really nice to wear, really soft on the skin. People like them for the beach especially. She sells lots of them in her shop." "Lindsay has a shop?" "Yes, she makes all the clothes herself, mostly dresses like this towel thing. The shop's called Tubes Are Us." She owns a building in Barnet High Street and lives in the flat above. She really enjoys creating stuff and is not too bothered about making lots of money. Her real job is being a stunt woman for films and, like me, the occasional magical stuff. I was going to ask you, are you worried about the professional secrets bit? Loads of people must have recognised you last night. The Gazette will be interested too. I'm not bothered. It's happened before in other towns and with other newspapers. I just tell them I have lots of personal issues and don't want to speak to anybody. They usually leave me alone then. It would only be a problem if they found out about Lindsay or how the trick worked. She put a stranglehold on John. And of course you're not going to tell them anything, are you, darling? The thought never crossed my mind, and I don't know how it was done anyway. Well, just to prove that we trust you, I think you should be told. What do you think, Lindsay? She asked her sister as she entered the room. Shall we tell him? Yes, tell him. He knows half of it already. OK, I'll start, said Susan, pouring her sister a grapefruit juice. First of all, have you worked out which of us went in the box? Well, I had no idea at the time because I thought it was just you, but yes, you spoke to me as you came into the marquee, so Lindsay must have been in the box. Yes. She painted over her tattoo and spent the early evening with her hen night friends. She pretended to get a bit tipsy and then reluctantly agreed to go onto the stage with Zoldini, where the police chief signed the handcuffs with a marker pen, put them on Lindsay and kept the key. Lindsay spoke next. You may have noticed that the box was quite big. You probably didn't notice how many assistants were on the stage in their overalls and helmets. Well, there were 10, and it's quite a strong clue when I tell you that at the end of the performance there were 11. One of them was me. The box was large because it contained a set of overalls, helmet, goggles, boots and a small black bag, some machinery, a small voice recorder with an amplifier, and a key for the handcuffs. I had to work very fast during the 3 minutes that Zoldini locked me up in the box and continued with his patter. You might think it's a bit difficult using a key to unlock handcuffs when your hands are behind you, but it only takes a few seconds and there were spare keys taped to the inside of the box. Then I took off the red shoes and put on a pair of inflatable feet. These I pushed out of the end of the box and Zoldini fixed them in the 2 holes. These false feet were attached to a little machine which made them waggle now and again. The machine was radio-controlled by a man at the side of the stage. This man also controlled the voice recorder and amplifier, so it seemed that I was having a conversation with Zoldini. We rehearsed this many, many times, and at one stage we did try using my real voice, but we realised it was too dangerous with all the things I had to do in such a short time. The amplifier was much better because it meant that my voice could be heard right up to the moment when the digger lifted up the box with me screaming. I had 2 minutes to put the overalls over my dress, pull on the boots, put on the helmet and goggles, and last of all put the handcuffs into the black bag. The side of the box that was facing away from the audience was hinged on the top edge and held in place at the bottom with a small piece of masking tape. As soon as I was ready, I kicked the side open and rolled out of the back of the box, keeping flat on the floor so I couldn't be seen by the audience. This was a signal for the digger to start up. It crashed through the paper screen, making a very powerful distraction for the audience. This is when I joined the gang of assistants as they scrambled to the back of the stage. A couple of them deliberately fell over behind the box, so, in the very unlikely case that anyone was looking at them instead of the digger, no one would have noticed me getting up off the floor with the others. Also, I was in comparative darkness because of the spotlights on the digger and the front of the box. As you saw, the digger picked up the box, complete with my screams, and smashed it onto the ground. When the digger bucket crashed down on the box, the inflatable feet burst and the shoes fell onto the ground undamaged. The bucket destroyed all the mechanical bits as well as the amplifier, so all I had to do was stand at the back of the stage and pass the black bag through a gap in the tent to a waiting security man. He ran outside the entrance to the marquee where Susan was waiting in her hiding place behind a door marked Staff Only, in her green dress and no shoes. "You finish your breakfast, sis," interrupted Susan. Well, as you might have gathered, I had the easy part. The security man put the handcuffs on me, and all I had to do was walk in the entrance, looking slightly dazed and confused, and accept all the glory and applause for doing nothing at all. It's a weird way to earn money, I must admit. John was looking thoughtful. And the police chief checked his signature on the handcuffs, so even if people guessed you had a twin, they would have a job explaining that bit. Zoldini might be weird, said Susan, but he and his team are very clever at what they do. Isn't it dangerous for you, though? John asked Lindsay. Not really. Nothing was allowed to happen until I was well clear of the box. I bet you had to keep on good terms with the backstage man and the digger driver. Oh yes, you just have to trust some people. Anyway, to finish up, one of the security men whisked me off in a car, so there was no chance of us both being seen at the same time. He dropped me off here and later, and I called you when I started to get worried. She stood up. Listen, I have to go and meet a buyer at the shop this afternoon. Are you going to be late? Asked Susan. Lindsay looked at her watch. Actually, I've got plenty of time, but I want to get everything ready before he arrives. Business on a Sunday? Said John. Oh, yes. He's Jewish and super rich and very high up in the rag trade. If he wants a meeting on a Sunday, he gets a meeting on a Sunday. Lindsay's wearing another one of her works of art, said Susan to John. Show him, sis. Lindsay performed a few quick poses, showing off a very similar garment to Susan's towel dress, only it was tan-coloured and covered in fringes from top to bottom. This is my latest creation, she said. Do you think it makes me look like a 1920s flapper about to do the Charleston? She noted their nods of approval, grabbed the handle of her bag on wheels and headed for the door. Susan kicked her as she left. Thanks for the rescue, sis. Any time. No, not any time. Never again, please. Keep her out of trouble, John. Bye. Susan went back into the kitchen and closed the door by leaning her back against it with her hands behind her. The door clicked shut. They looked at each other across the kitchen. John spoke first. We're going to Ben's place at 3:00. It's 11:30 now. What would you like to do until then? He asked as he walked towards her. When they were face to face, Susan whispered, You could find out how I get out of a tube towel. They scrambled up the stairs to Susan's room and locked the door. Down below, Lindsay stood on the doorstep looking at her car. The mud splatters acquired the night before had dried, and a casual observer might have thought it had been used for rallying. A far from casual observer, in the form of a policewoman, was looking at it and writing in a notebook. Is this your car, madam? She asked. Yes, said Lindsay. Is there a problem? Would you mind if I came in for a few minutes? I need to ask you some questions. Well, this isn't my house. My sister lives here, but I don't think she'll mind. She opened the door with her key. Come through. She's in the kitchen. Oh, no, she's not. Must still be asleep. She lowered her voice. Never mind, this won't take long, will it? She closed the door after the policewoman had sat down at the table. I'm WPC Foster, and you're Lindsay Savage. Is that right? Yes. Were you in your car near the marquee in Boxmoor last night? Yes. Did you have any problems? The reason why I'm asking is that we received reports of an incident soon after midnight. A few residents of St John's Road reported some kind of confrontation between the occupants of two vehicles. One of them with your registration number and a larger vehicle, but we don't have the registration number of that. Barely audible sounds could be heard coming from the floor above. WPC Foster glanced up at the ceiling, but Lindsay gazed straight ahead. Well, my car got stuck in some muddy ground by the canal, and a bunch of lads arrived and pushed it out for me. They were going on to a stag night, I think, she said more or less truthfully. One of the residents told us she thought she saw someone carrying a gun of some sort. Lindsay stared at the notebook so she could lie more efficiently. I don't know anything about a gun. I didn't see anything like that when I was there. I couldn't say what happened after I went home, though. The truth of the last sentence allowed her to look at the policewoman in the eye again. The lampshade above the kitchen table began to wobble, and more recognisable sounds could be heard, like furniture scraping on the floor and human voices. A small flake of plaster fluttered down from the ceiling. Sounds like your sister is waking up. Perhaps she can help me. Was she in the car too? Lindsay stared at the notebook again. No, she was here last night with her boyfriend. They were going to do some DIY upstairs this morning. They must have started already. Well, I'll leave it there for now, said WPC Foster as she stood up ready to go. It's all right, I can see myself out. Thank you for your help, Miss Savage. Lindsay went with her to the hallway. I'll let you out because I have to be on my way too." As she opened the door, there was a crash upstairs like a chair falling over. "They sound as if they're working very hard." "Yes, they do, don't they?" said Lindsay, glancing upwards as she very gently closed the door.